The storm came the night Marcus Thornridge's daughter died. Lightning carved the Oregon sky into jagged pieces, each strike illuminating the Cascade Mountains in violent white. Rain hammered the ancient pines until their branches bent like broken spines. The air tasted of ozone and something older, something that had no name in the language of wolves. Marcus held Lydia against his chest, her 15-year-old body convulsing as wind screamed through the clearing. Not natural wind. This was a live sentient, and it was eating her from the inside out. Her hair whipped in a cyclone that touched nothing else. Her eyes had gone silver white, pupils vanished into light. Blood trickled from her nose, her ears, the corners of her mouth. The mark over her heart, the spiral that had appeared 3 days ago, pulsed with each labored breath, glowing brighter as her heartbeat weakened. Marcus pressed his hand over the mark, trying to smother it, trying to stop whatever was consuming his child. His fingers burned. The spiral flared hotter. Lydia's scream tore through the thunder. Not pain, terror. Her voice came in fragments between gasps. "Papa, I can't. The wind. It won't stop. It wants." The cyclone around her intensified. Branches ripped from trees. Stones lifted from the earth. Marcus held her tighter, felt her ribs cracking under his grip, but he couldn't let go. If he released her, the wind would take her completely. Around them, the Ironwood Pack's healers chanted moon prayers, their voices drowned by the roar of air moving faster than nature allowed. Elder Tobias threw blessed water that evaporated before it touched her. The pack's strongest warriors formed a circle trying to create a barrier between the girl and the storm, but wind had no respect for flesh. Marcus had spent 28 years as a warrior, 14 as an elder. He had killed rogues with his bare hands, survived challenges that should have ended him, led his pack through famine and war. None of it prepared him for watching his daughter dissolve into air currents. Lydia's left hand began to fade. Not vanish fade. Her fingers turned translucent, then transparent, then simply weren't there anymore. The wind had claimed them. Marcus roared a sound no human throat should produce. He pulled her closer, trying to anchor her to earth through sheer will. That's when he appeared. The ghost materialized in the center of the cyclone, untouched by the chaos. An old man, ancient actually, with eyes that held the weight of centuries. He wore clothes from another era, buckskin and bone ornaments, and his presence carried an authority that made even the storm hesitate. The ghost looked at Lydia with something like pity, then at Marcus with something like resignation. His voice cut through the wind, clear as a bell in the chaos. "She fights it. That's why it consumes her." Marcus barely heard over his daughter's screams. "Help her!" The ghost shook his head. "Only one can help her, the 77th. Lydia's right hand started fading now. Her forearms followed, disappearing into silver mist. She was being erased. Marcus felt something inside him fracture. "Tell me how to save her. Tell me." The ghost form flickered. She must surrender, stop controlling, start merging. But she's too afraid, too young, too... Another scream from Lydia, this one softer, weaker. Half her torso had gone translucent. Marcus could see through her chest to the storm beyond. Desperation clawed up his throat. "Then I'll surrender. Take me instead." The ghost's expression held centuries of sorrow. "It doesn't work that way. Wind chooses its vessels. She was born for this." But without the key, without knowing how to, lightning struck directly between them. The ghost form scattered like smoke. His voice echoed as he faded. "The 77th Windborne will show the way." When moon and wind finally, thunder drowned the rest. The ghost vanished completely, and Lydia's eyes, those silver white eyes, fixed on her father's face one last time. Her lips formed words, "I'm sorry, Papa." Then she was gone. Not dead, gone. Her body dissolved completely into wind, into light, into nothing. The cyclone collapsed. The storm broke. Rain fell normally, as if nature herself was weeping. Marcus knelt in mud, arms still curved around empty air, where his daughter had been seconds before. The pack stood in shocked silence, the kind that follows catastrophes beyond comprehension. Elder Tobias approached cautiously, placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Brother, I'm..." Marcus's hand shot up, gripped Tobias by the throat, lifted him off the ground. The elder's eyes bulged. Pack warriors moved to intervene. Marcus's voice came out barely human. "The 77th," he said, "the 77th." Tobias choked out words. 77th. What? Marcus's grip tightened. Windborne. There are more of them. There will be more. He released Tobias, who collapsed gasping. Marcus stood, rain streaming down his face, mingling with tears he refused to acknowledge. Around him, the pack waited, uncertain, afraid of their elder's grief. Marcus spoke to the storm, to the absent ghost, to the wind that had stolen his child. There won't be a 77th. There won't be another Lydia. I'll hunt every bloodline. I'll burn every family tree. I'll kill them all before they awaken. Lightning flickered in the distance as if the storm was listening. Marcus turned to his pack, and in his eyes they saw something that would define the next 25 years, absolute conviction, wrapped in absolute loss. He pointed at three warriors. You, and you. We have work to do. Ancient work. Secret work. There are texts in the vault records the founders kept. We're going to find every Windborne bloodline in existence, and we're going to end them before another child dies screaming for her father. Elder Tobias found his voice hoarse from the choking. Marcus, that's the old laws forbid hunting bloodlines. The moon herself. Marcus's laugh held no humor. The moon didn't save her. The moon stood by and watched my daughter disappear into wind. So we do this without the moon's blessing. We do this in secret. We do this until there's no risk left. He walked toward the compound, leaving his daughter's empty clothes in the mud. Over his shoulder, one final vow. I failed Lydia. I won't fail the next child by letting the 77th awaken. The pack followed their grieving elder, none of them understanding they had just witnessed the birth of a 25-year genocide. The storm finally broke. The moon emerged pale and silent, casting light on ground where Lydia Thornridge had ceased to exist. And in the distance, carried on wind currents that touched nothing else, a whisper that might have been her voice, or might have been something older. Papa, you're wrong. But Marcus didn't hear it. He was already planning the first death. 25 years later, Mira Ashwood woke drowning. Not in water, in wind. Her lungs filled with air that moved too fast, too thick, like breathing mercury. She clawed at her throat, gasping, and felt her fingers pass through her own neck, translucent, fading, disappearing. Mira jolted upright in bed, actually gasping now, actually alive. Moonlight spilled through her chamber window, illuminating tapestries of pack history and shelves of healing herbs. Real, solid, not dissolving into storm. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Sweat soaked through her nightgown, plastering dark hair to her forehead. She pressed both palms flat against the mattress, grounding herself in texture-temperature reality. The same nightmare, third time this week, each time more vivid than the last. In the dream, she always saw a girl's face, young, terrified, screaming as wind stripped her away piece by piece. The girl's eyes met hers in those final moments, silver white and ancient, in whispered words Mira could never quite remember upon waking. She swung her legs over the bed's edge, bare feet finding cool wooden planks. The ironwood pack compound remained silent around her. Dawn hadn't broken yet, but soon the maids would arrive to prepare her for... Her stomach clenched. Today was the day. Today she would become Luna. Today she would mate with Cade Thornridge Alpha of Ironwood, the man she'd loved since childhood, the man whose promises had carried her through every doubt and fear and lonely night when the future felt too vast to navigate alone. Today everything would be perfect. So why did her hands shake when she thought about it? Mira moved to the wash basin, splashed cold water on her face. The mirror above it reflected a woman she barely recognized, 24 years old. But looking younger in this light beta bloodline features soft and unassuming brown eyes that had never seen silver hair that held no trace of white. She touched the mirror's surface, watching her reflection mimic the gesture. For a heartbeat less than a heartbeat, a fraction of a breath, her eyes flashed silver white in the glass. Mara jerked her hand back, blinked hard, looked again. Brown eyes stared back. Normal. Human. Wolf-blessed, but nothing more. The door burst open. Mira spun, heart still racing from the mirror moment, and found Celine standing in the doorway. Her best friend since childhood, now 25, and very clearly pregnant, clutched the doorframe with white knuckles. Celine's copper hair hung lank around her face, damp with sweat despite the cool morning air. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her free hand pressed against her rounded belly, 6 months along, though she'd told no one who the father was. Mira crossed the room in 3 strides. Cell, what's wrong? The baby. Celine shook her head, cutting her off. I'm fine. The baby's fine. I needed to see you before the maids arrive and everything becomes ceremony and performance. Something in her friend's voice made Mira's chest tighten. Celine wouldn't meet her eyes. Mira guided her to the bed, helped her sit. Celine's hands trembled against her belly. Outside, the first hints of dawn bled into the eastern sky, turning darkness to deep purple. Mira sat beside her shoulder to shoulder the way they'd sat 1,000 times before. Talk to me, what's happening? Celine's jaw worked for a moment before words emerged. I need to tell you something. About the baby, about... She cut herself off, eyes squeezing shut. After the ceremony. I'll tell you after the ceremony, I promise. Mira's hand found Celine's squeeze gently. Cel, you're scaring me. Whatever it is, you can tell me now. Celine finally looked at her, and Mira saw something she'd never seen in her friend's face before, pure, crystalline fear. Celine's voice came out barely audible. Do you ever feel like everything's about to change, like the world you know is about to end, and you're the only one who sees it coming? Mira thought of her nightmare of drowning in wind of silver eyes in the mirror. Her mouth went dry. Sometimes. Celine stood abruptly, pulling away. She moved to the window, stared out at the compound awakening below. Morning patrols changing shifts, mothers calling children to breakfast, life continuing as it always had. When Celine spoke again, her voice carried an edge of desperation. If something happens today, if things go wrong, I need you to know, I need you to understand, I never wanted... The door opened again, this time revealing 3 maids carrying baskets of moonflower petals, silver thread, and the ceremonial gown Mira would wear in a few hours. The lead maid, an older woman named Iris, smiled warmly. Luna to be, we must begin preparations. The ceremony starts at dusk and there's much to... She noticed Celine frowned slightly. Celine, dear, perhaps you should rest. You look unwell. Celine wiped her face quickly, composing herself. She moved toward the door, pausing beside Mira just long enough to whisper, remember what I said. After the ceremony, no matter what happens, remember, I tried to warn you. Then she was gone, leaving Mira frozen between confusion and dread. Iris bustled forward, setting down baskets. Don't mind her, my lady. Pregnancy hormones make emotions run wild. Now let's make you the most beautiful Luna this pack has ever seen. Mira let herself be guided to the chair before the mirror, let the maids begin their work. But Celine's words echoed. Everything's about to change. And in the mirror's reflection, just for a moment, too brief to question, her eyes flickered silver again. The flashback hit Mira while the maids braided moonflower petals into her hair. She was 14 again, standing in the crowd at the edge of the moon arch, watching Cade Thornridge undergo his alpha trial. 15 years old and already carrying the weight of leadership expectations, already harder around the eyes than a boy should be. The trial's rules were ancient and brutal: kill a captured rogue to prove dominance or forfeit the alpha seat. Simple. Absolute. Moon-ordained fun. The rogue was a child, maybe 11 years old, thin and terrified, with tangled blonde hair and eyes that held too much understanding of what came next. The pack had caught her trespassing 2 days prior. No family, no pack, just a lone wolf cub who'd made the mistake of hunting too close to Ironwood territory. Pack law was clear. Rogues meant danger. Rogues meant disease and instability, and everything the moon-blessed packs had fought to eliminate. The child's execution would be mercy compared to the slow death of starvation in the wilderness. That's what everyone told themselves as they gathered to watch. Young Mira had stood between her mother and father, both Beta bloodline, both respected healers. Her mother's hand rested on her shoulder, gentle pressure keeping her in place. Elder Tobias, younger then, voice stronger, announced the trial's terms. The child would be released in the center of the fighting circle. Cade would pursue in wolf form. Clean kill, no prolonged suffering. The rogue girl hadn't cried. That's what haunted Mira most in memory. The child stood in the circle's center, small and defiant, and didn't make a sound. Cade shifted. His black wolf was already massive, even at 15, muscles rippling under fur, alpha power, evident in every movement. He circled the girl slowly, and Mira saw his hesitation in the way his ears flattened, the way he circled twice instead of striking immediately. The crowd grew restless. Murmurs began. Cade's father, Alpha Thornridge, now dead 2 years, stood at the circle's edge, expression carved from stone. Complete the trial, son. Prove your strength. The rogue girl met Cade's wolf eyes. She didn't plead, didn't beg, just looked at him with an expression that asked a single question. Are you really going to do this? Young Mira felt her throat close. She wanted to shout to stop it, to demand they exile the child instead of killing her. Her mother's hand tightened on her shoulder, reading her intent, holding her still. The moment stretched. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Then Alpha Thornridge's voice, sharp as a blade. Now, Cade, or forfeit your future. Cade's wolf lunged, one strike, fast, efficient, merciful by execution standards. The girl's neck snapped cleanly. She dropped without a sound, just as she'd stood silent in the face of moon law. The crowd erupted in cheers. Alpha Thornridge's face remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes that might have been approval, or might have been disappointment that his son had hesitated at all. Cade shifted back to human form, naked and breathing hard, standing over the small body. Mira watched his face, watched something die in his expression, even as the pack celebrated his ascension to Alpha Air. Later, hours later, after the feast, after the congratulations, after everyone had forgotten about the rogue child whose body was burned before sunset, Mira found Cade in the stables. He sat in Shadow's stall, the Alpha's warhorse, knees drawn to his chest, still naked because he'd run from the ceremony without bothering to dress. In the dim lamplight, he looked smaller than he had in the circle, more human, more breakable. Mira approached quietly. Cade. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. Did you see? She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Cade's voice came out hollow. I had to. You understand that, right? I had to choose the pack. Mira sat beside him in the straw, not caring about her dress. She was just a child. His jaw clenched. She was a rogue. She would have died anyway in the wilderness, torn apart by real predators or starvation or... Mira touched his hand. His fingers were freezing, despite the warm night. She found her voice barely. You could have said no. You could have challenged the law. Cade's laugh came out broken and lost everything. My father, the council, the pack, they would have stripped my alpha rights, exiled me, or worse. And then you and I, he stopped, looked at her with desperate intensity. We're promised to each other, Mira. Have been since we were children. If I'd lost my position, they would have given you to another alpha heir. We would have been separated forever. The words hung between them, truth and justification tangled too tightly to separate. Mira wanted to argue, wanted to say that some things mattered more than position or promises. But she was 14 and he was 15, and the weight of pack law felt absolute in that moment. Instead, she leaned her head against his shoulder. I'll marry you because I love you. But Cade, she pulled back to look at him directly. I'll never forget her face. His eyes held hers, searching for condemnation or absolution, finding something in between. I won't either. He kissed her forehead, gentle and chaste, a promise of protection he would spend the next decade trying to honor. But even then, even as she let him hold her in the darkness of the stable, Mira felt something shift in her chest. A small crack in the foundation of trust. Not wide enough to break them apart, just wide enough for doubt to seep through. The memory released Mira back to present with a gasp. Iris stepped back, concern creasing her weathered face. My lady, you went pale. Are you feeling ill? Mira blinked, reorienting. The maids had finished her hair, intricate braids woven with moonflower petals, silver thread catching lamplight. Her reflection showed a woman ready for ceremony. But behind her eyes, she still saw that rogue child's face. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Mid-morning now. The ceremony wouldn't begin until dusk, but already she could hear the pack assembling below, setting up torches around the moon arch, preparing the feast that would follow vows. Mira's throat felt tight. I'm fine, just wedding nerves. Iris smiled knowingly. Every bride feels them. But you and Alpha Cade, the whole pack knows your love story. Childhood promises fulfilled. It's like something from the old tales. The other maids murmured agreement as they unpacked the ceremonial gown. Silver silk that shimmered like moonlight on water, embroidered with pack symbols cut to honor tradition while celebrating the new Luna's grace. Beautiful. Perfect. Everything Mira had imagined since she was a girl, playing wedding with Celine in the forest. So why did looking at it make her chest constrict? Mira stood moved to the window while the maids fussed with the gown's presentation. Below, she could see the packed compound spreading across the valley, wooden structures built over generations, smoke rising from morning fires, children chasing each other between buildings while their mothers called warnings. Beyond the compound's wooden walls stretched 50,000 acres of cascade forest, ancient pines, hidden streams, mountains that touch clouds. Packed territory for 200 years, defended against rogues and rival packs and the slow encroachment of human civilization beyond the wilderness buffer. Home, safety, everything she'd ever known. A figure moved through the crowd below, and Mira's heart kicked against her ribs. Cade. Even from this distance, she recognized his stride, confident but not arrogant, purposeful without rush. 26 years old and Alpha for 2 years since his father's death. He'd grown into the role, learned to lead with compassion, tempered by strength. He looked up suddenly as if sensing her gaze, and their eyes met across the distance. He smiled, that private smile he reserved for her alone, the one that made her remember late nights talking about their future, about the pack they'd lead together, about children they'd raise with more kindness than tradition usually allowed. Mira smiled back, but something cold moved through her chest. The nightmare lingered at the edges of her consciousness, drowning in wind-silver eyes, that girl's face screaming as she dissolved. Movement on the compound's eastern wall caught her attention. Elder Marcus stood there, weathered and white-haired, watching the ceremony preparations with an expression she couldn't read from this distance. 60 years old now. Marcus had been an elder for as long as Mira could remember. Stern but fair, devoted to pack law, respected by everyone. He'd lost his daughter young. Mira didn't know, details, just whispered stories about a tragedy that broke him and made him harder. As she watched, Marcus's gaze shifted from the ceremony preparations to her window, to her. Their eyes met, and for just a moment Mira saw something in his expression that sent ice down her spine. Not malice. Something worse, resignation tinged with sorrow, the look of a man watching an inevitable tragedy unfold. Then he turned away, descending from the wall, disappearing into the compound's depths. Mira shivered despite the warm room. Iris's voice pulled her back. "My lady, we should begin dressing you. It takes time to secure the gown properly." Mira nodded, let herself be guided to the dressing screen, let the maids begin the elaborate process of transformation from woman to Luna. But as silver silk settled against her skin, cool and foreign, she couldn't shake the feeling that Celine had been right. Everything was about to change, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Elder Marcus descended into the compound's lowest level, where ancient texts and forgotten records gathered dust in sealed chambers. The vault smelled of old paper and older secrets. He moved past shelves documenting pack history, births, deaths, territorial disputes, alliance treaties. His fingers trailed along spines until he reached the back wall where 7 leather-bound journals sat apart from everything else. Private records. His records. 25 years of work that no one else could know about. Marcus pulled the 7th volume, the one he'd begun just 6 months ago, and opened to the last entry. The page showed a family tree meticulously researched. The Ashwood lineage traced back 7 generations. Most branches marked with small red X's, deceased eliminated, neutralized. One branch remained unmarked, the youngest generation. Marcus's finger traced down to the final name, Mira Ashwood Beta, bloodline, healer apprentice, promised Luna. Daughter of Robert and Sarah Ashwood. Granddaughter of Rose Ashwood, who had drowned in a training accident 21 years ago. Official cause, swept away by rapids during a hunting expedition. Unofficial truth. Marcus had held her head underwater while she screamed about wind in her lungs, about power she couldn't control, about needing help before it consumed her like it had consumed so many others. Rose had been number 76, which made Mira. Marcus closed his eyes, seeing Lydia's face in memory, hearing her final screams. The bloodline test he'd administered on Mira 3 years ago had come back negative for Windborne markers. Clean, normal, just an ordinary wolf-blessed beta with no hint of the ancient power that had murdered his daughter. But tests could lie. Genes could hide dormant until awakened by trauma or ceremony or the moon's alignment. And Marcus had watched Mira over these 3 years. Watched the way wind moved around her when she stood in the compound courtyard, watched leaves spiral toward her when she walked through autumn forest, watched the subtle wrongness that everyone else missed because they weren't looking for it. She was 77. He felt it in his bones in the way the air pressure changed when she entered a room and the way storms seemed to pause over the compound when she was present. The prophecy had been incomplete, that damn ghost had been killed mid-sentence, but Marcus had pieced together enough from ancient texts. The 77th Windborne would be different. Special. The one who could merge moon and wind, who could master what had killed all the others. Which meant she was the most dangerous of all. Marcus closed the journal, returned it to its place. Tonight Mira would undergo the mating ceremony. The ritual would awaken latent powers if they existed. The moon's blessing always amplified what already slept in the blood. If Myra showed no signs of awakening, then he'd been wrong. She would become Luna Lead alongside Cade, live a normal life. If she awakened, Marcus's hand moved to the knife at his belt, the one he'd used 76 times before. Silver-edged, blessed under dying moons sharp enough to cut through supernatural flesh. He wouldn't let another child die screaming. Not even if that child wore a wedding gown and believed herself human. Mercy killings were still mercy. Marcus extinguished the lamp, sealed the vault, and climbed back toward daylight, where a wedding awaited, and history was about to repeat itself whether anyone realized it or not. Behind him in the darkness, wind moved through the sealed chamber despite the absence of windows or doors. And if Marcus had stayed, if he'd listened, he would have heard it whisper 77. But he was already gone, carrying his conviction like armor against doubt. Dusk fell over the Cascade Mountains, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Mira stood before the full-length mirror in her chamber transformed. The silver gown clung to her curves before flowing to the ground in a waterfall of shimmering fabric. Moonflower petals in her hair released subtle fragrance with each movement. Silver jewelry pack heirlooms passed from Luna to Luna, circled her throat and wrists. She looked like something from legends. Beautiful, ethereal, chosen by the moon herself, and absolutely terrified. The maids had left her alone for these final moments before the procession tradition, dictating the bride commune with the moon in solitude. Through her window, Mira watched the full moon rise early, fat and silver hanging just above the eastern peaks. Her reflection stared back, and this time the silver flash in her eyes didn't fade quickly. It lingered, pulsing with her heartbeat before slowly draining back to brown. Mira touched the mirror's cool surface. "What are you? What's happening to me?" No answer came, just her own frightened face and the rising moon beyond. A knock at the door made her jump. Her father's voice filtered through. "Mira, it's time." She took one last breath, forcing calm she didn't feel, and opened the door. Robert Ashwood stood in formal ceremonial dress, gray streaking his dark hair, eyes warm with paternal pride. Behind him, her mother Sarah waited already, crying happy tears. Her father offered his arm. "You look just like your grandmother." Mira stiffened. She'd been 3 when Rose Ashwood died, drowned, they said, in a tragic accident. She barely remembered her grandmother's face, but the way her father said it with that odd note of sadness beneath the pride made something cold settle in her stomach. Sarah moved forward, adjusted a moonflower that had slipped in Mira's braid. "She would be so proud of you, sweetheart, of the woman you've become." Mira wanted to ask about her grandmother, about the drowning, about whether Rose had ever seen things in mirrors that shouldn't be there. But the drums had started below the ceremonial rhythm that called the pack to gather. She took her father's arm, let him lead her from the chamber down the winding stairs toward the destiny everyone had planned for her since birth. The compound had transformed. Torches lined every path, their flames dancing in the evening breeze. Pack members in ceremonial dress created a corridor from the main lodge to the moon arch, faces glowing with anticipation. Children threw flower petals. Elders nodded approval. Warriors stood at attention, honoring their future Luna. And at the end of the torch-lit path, beneath the ancient stone arch carved from bones of wolves past, or so legend claimed, Cade waited. He wore the Alpha's formal cloak, midnight black, with silver threading that caught firelight. His dark hair had been pulled back, revealing the strong angles of his face. At 26, he'd grown into his authority, no longer the hesitant boy who'd killed to claim his birthright. But as their eyes met across the distance, Mira saw that boy flash across his features. Vulnerable, hopeful, loving her with an intensity that had survived doubt and death and the weight of duty. Her feet moved automatically, carrying her down the path. The pack's voices rose in the ancient song, words older than ironwood itself, older than the moon's covenant with wolves, old as the first pack that learned to walk on 2 legs while keeping 4-legged souls. Celine stood near the front of the crowd, belly prominent, face streaked with tears. Their eyes met and Celine mouthed, "I'm sorry." Mira's step faltered. Her father's hand tightened on her arm, keeping her moving. They reached the moon arch. Robert kissed her cheek, whispered, "Be happy, my daughter," and stepped back, leaving her alone with Cade beneath the stone monolith. Elder Marcus emerged from the shadows behind the arch, carrying the ceremonial staff, 6 feet of carved wood, topped with a silver crescent. He moved with the gravitas of 60 years and secrets heavier than any moon law. His eyes met Mira's and she saw it again, that look of resignation and sorrow. But when he spoke, his voice carried only formal tradition. "We gather beneath the blessed moon to witness the binding of AlphaKing Thornridge and Mira Ashwood. Their union shall strengthen the pack's blood and honor the moon's decree." The pack responded in ritual chorus, "As the moon wills." Marcus turned to Mira, staff pointing, "Mira Ashwood, daughter of Robert and Sarah Child of Beta bloodline, do you come willingly to this binding?" Her mouth opened. The word yes waited on her tongue, but something made her hesitate. The nightmare flashed, drowning in wind-silver eyes that girl's terrified face. Cade's hand found hers, squeezed gently. His touch grounded her, reminded her of every promise they'd made, every dream they'd shared. She found her voice, "I come willingly." Marcus's expression flickered. Was that disappointment before returning to neutral? "Do you take Cade Thornridge as your mate and husband, to love him, to stand beside him, and to honor his soul for as long as the moon rises?" This time, no hesitation, "I do." The words emerged steady despite the storm building inside her chest. She squeezed Cade's hand, smiled through tears that were bushy in terror and something she couldn't name. Marcus turned to Cade. "And you, Cade Thornridge, son of—" A scream tore through the ceremony. Every head turned. Celine stumbled forward from the crowd, clutching her pregnant belly, face contorted in pain and panic, and something that looked rehearsed in its desperation. Her pale hair clung to her face with sweat. Her eyes were wild and rimmed red. She took 3 staggering steps toward the arch before her knees buckled. 2 warriors caught her before she hit the ground. The pack erupted in gasps and concerned murmurs. Mira's heart stopped. She moved to go to her friend, but Cade's hand held her in place. Celine's voice, shrill and accusing, cut through the chaos. "Stop! Stop the ceremony!" Elder Marcus's face went carefully blank. Mira noticed it, the lack of surprise in his expression, as if he'd been expecting this. Celine pushed away from the warriors supporting her, staggered another step forward, one hand clutching her stomach, the other pointing directly at Mira. When she spoke, her voice carried across the silent crowd. "You poisoned me." The words didn't make sense. Mira's mind tried to process them, reject them, understand them. "What?" Celine's voice broke on a sob. "You offered me tea this evening. You said it would calm my nausea. But it was wolfsbane. You poisoned me because you found out." The world tilted sideways. Mira reached for Cade's hand, but he pulled away, stepping back, face carved from stone. Her voice came out small and confused. "Found out what cell? I don't understand." Celine pressed her hand to her belly, tears streaming. "About me and the Alpha." Silence. Absolute. The kind that follows reality's shattering. Then Celine's next words, each one a knife. "About me and Cade's child." The clearing erupted. Gasps, shouts, pack members pushing closer to hear better. Mira stood frozen, the silver gown suddenly too tight, the moonflowers in her hair releasing perfume that smelled like rot. She looked at Cade. He stood 3 feet away, but might as well have been 3 miles. His face held no expression. None. As if he'd carved away every emotion and replaced it with alpha authority. Mira's voice cracked. "Cade, tell them it isn't true. Tell them." But he didn't speak, didn't defend her, didn't move. And in his silence, Mira understood that Celine hadn't just accused her of poisoning. She'd accused her of jealous rage, of attempted murder, of being so consumed by possessiveness that she'd harm an unborn child. The pack's eyes burned on her skin. She heard whispers rising like smoke. The Luna poisoning the Alpha's mistress. She always seemed too soft for a Luna. Jealousy makes monsters of us all. Mira spun back to Celine. "I gave you tea this morning like I always do. For your nausea, I didn't. There was no wolfsbane." Celine's sobs intensified. "You told me you'd never let me have him." that you'd rather see me dead than share him. Mira's mind spun trying to grasp what was happening. I never said that. Celine were friends. I would never. Elder Marcus's staff struck the ground, the crack of wood on stone silencing the crowd. His voice carried authority that brooked no argument. This is a serious accusation we must investigate before proceeding. He gestured to two guards. Search Luna Tabi's quarters. Look for evidence of wolfsbane. The guards moved immediately, disappearing into the compound, while 300 wolves waited in terrible silence. Mira looked to her parents. Her father stood pale and shocked. Her mother had covered her mouth with both hands, eyes wide with horror. She looked to Cade again, desperate. You know me. You've known me since we were children. You know I would never. His jaw tightened. A muscle twitched in his cheek. But still he didn't speak, didn't defend, didn't move toward her. And in his eyes she saw something that made her soul crack. Calculation. He was weighing options, considering consequences, choosing between her and something else. Just like he'd chosen between that rogue child and his alpha seat 10 years ago. The guards returned faster than seemed possible, almost as if they'd known exactly where to look. One held up a small glass vial, the kind healers use for potent medicines. Purple residue clung to its rim, pungent enough to smell from yards away. The guard's voice carried across the clearing. Found beneath the Luna's wash basin, my alpha. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mira's knees went weak. She grabbed the arch for support. That's not mine. I've never seen that before. Someone planted, but her denial drowned in the crowd's reaction. Warriors moved closer, forming a loose circle around her. Not hostile yet, but ready, treating her like a threat. Elder Marcus held up the vial, examined it with theatrical care. Wolfsbane, concentrated, enough to kill a grown wolf, more than enough to harm a pregnant woman and her child. He turned to Mira, and she saw it clearly now. The plan had been set in motion long before tonight, all the pieces arranged, all the players positioned. Marcus's voice carried false sorrow. Mira Ashwood, what do you say to these charges? Her voice came out hollow. I say they're lies, all of it. I didn't poison Celine, I didn't threaten her. Someone is framing me. Marcus's expression didn't change. And who would do such a thing? The question hung in the air, impossible to answer, because naming Marcus would sound like deflection. Naming Cade would reveal fractures in their relationship. Naming anyone else would require proof she didn't have. She was trapped in a perfect conspiracy. Mira's eyes found Celine's through the crowd. Her best friend met her gaze for just a moment, and in that moment Mira saw truth-guilt mixed with terror, the look of someone forced into betrayal. Celine mouthed something, might have been "forgive me" or "help me," impossible to tell, before looking away. Understanding crashed through Mira. Celine had been coerced, threatened, forced to play this role by someone with enough power to destroy her if she refused. But who and why? Elder Marcus's voice cut through her spinning thoughts. Alpha Cade, as the wronged party, the decision falls to you. How shall we proceed? Every eye turned to Cade. The moon hung heavy above them, witness to whatever came next. Cade's throat worked, his hands clenched into fists. And for just a moment, Mira saw the boy in the stable again, the one who'd wept after killing a child, the one who'd promised to always choose her. His voice came out rough. Search her quarters again, thoroughly, and question those who had access to her chambers today. Relief flickered in Mira's chest. He was giving her a chance, demanding more investigation before condemning. Then Marcus spoke, gentle but firm. My Alpha, with respect, we have witnesses who saw her give tea to Celine this morning. We have the poison found in her possession. Further delay only. Cade's hand shot up, silencing the elder. I said search again. The two men stared at each other, a silent battle of wills that the pack watched with collective breath held. Finally, Marcus bowed his head. As you command, my Alpha. But as the guards moved to search again, Marcus's eyes met someone in the crowd. A signal passed between them, too quick for Mira to identify who received it. 10 minutes later, a female guard emerged, holding a torn page from what looked like a journal. She approached Cade, handed it to him with a bow. Cade read. His face went carefully blank again. When he looked up at Mira, something in his eyes had died. He held up the page for the crowd to see, a page from Celine's journal found hidden in Mira's personal chest. It details the affair between Celine and myself, and Celine's fear of what Mira might do if she discovered it. Mira's world fractured. That's not, I've never caged someone is setting me up. Can't you see that? But the crowd had turned. She saw it in their faces, heard it in their whispers. Luna to be caught in jealous rage. Healer turned poisoner. Woman scorned, willing to commit murder. The narrative wrote itself, perfect and complete. Cade's voice came out hollow. Mira Ashwood, did you poison Celine with intent to harm her or her unborn child? She met his eyes across the distance that had opened between them. No. He blinked, something flickering across his features. Did you threaten her life if she didn't leave the pack? Mira's voice grew stronger. No, Cade, you know me. You've known me since we were children. I would never. His hand rose, cutting her off. I thought I knew you. The words hit like physical blows. Mira staggered, caught herself against the stone arch. And in that moment, standing beneath the moon, she'd been promised to wearing the gown meant for her happiest day. Mira understood what was happening. Cade was choosing, just like he'd chosen 10 years ago in the fighting circle. Only this time he was choosing to believe lies over her truth, choosing pack stability over their bond, choosing his position over her life. He was choosing duty over her. Again. Elder Marcus's voice carried across the clearing, almost gentle in its cruelty. By moon law, poisoning with intent to harm is punishable by 70 lashes, stripping of wolf, and banishment. Alpha Cade, what is your judgment? The pack held its breath. Cade's jaw worked. His eyes held Mira's, and she saw the war raging behind them. Love versus duty, heart versus position, the boy who'd promised versus the alpha he'd become. When he spoke, each word fell like a stone. Strip her of the Luna title. Hold her for trial by pack council at dawn. Not condemnation, not yet. A delay, a chance for truth to emerge, for the real conspiracy to reveal itself. But Marcus shook his head, voice still gentle. My alpha, the moon's law is clear. Poison used against pack. Remember, particularly one carrying alpha bloodline, demands immediate justice. Waiting until dawn risks the moon's favor being withdrawn. Cade's face hardened. I am alpha. We wait until dawn. Marcus bowed, but as he straightened, he turned to the crowd. Pack members of Ironwood, your alpha shows mercy to one who would murder his child. What say you, do we follow moon law or do we follow sentiment? The crowd stirred. Mira saw the divide forming. Some faces showed loyalty to Cade, willing to wait. But others, older wolves who remembered stricter times, who valued tradition over compassion, began to voice agreement with Marcus. The elder had just publicly questioned Cade's authority, and Cade Young, still finding his way as leader, still uncertain in his power, wavered. Mira saw it happen, saw the moment he chose pack unity over her defense, saw him become his father, become the alpha who would kill a child to prove strength. Cade's voice came out harder. Search once more. If any other evidence is found, any at all, then we proceed with moon law immediately. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, my alpha. The guards searched. This time they found more, a threatening note in Mira's handwriting, except she'd never written it, but the penmanship was close enough that doubt crept in even as she denied it. They found a second vial of wolfsbane, this one hidden in her healing supplies, where any pack member might have accessed it, but where she kept her most potent medicines. Every piece of evidence damned her further. Mira stopped protesting. She understood now. This wasn't about truth. This was about destroying her so completely that no one would question when she disappeared. But why? That's what she couldn't grasp. What had she done to deserve this level of conspiracy? The moon above pulsed almost imperceptibly, as if responding to her desperation. And in her chest, beneath her heart, something stirred. A heat that shouldn't exist. A pulse that wasn't her heartbeat, something ancient, waking to the scent of injustice. Elder Marcus approached Cade, spoke too low for most to hear, but Mira caught fragments. Cannot show weakness, Pack. Watching your father would have. Cade's face drained of color. His hand moved to his wrist, to the mark there that symbolized his alpha bond to the moon. When he spoke next, his voice carried no emotion at all. Mira Ashwood, by moon law and pack authority, you are found guilty of attempted murder through poison. The sentence is 70 lashes, stripping of your wolf, and immediate banishment from Ironwood territory. The words landed like an execution order. Mira heard screaming and realized distantly it was coming from her own throat. No, Cade, please. I didn't do this. I love you. Guards moved forward. Strong hands gripped her arms, dragged her toward the ancient whipping post that stood to the left of the moon arch. She fought, kicking and clawing the silver gown, tearing moonflowers falling from her hair. They bound her wrists to the post with silver-laced rope that burned supernatural flesh. Mira's wolf whimpered inside her, sensing what came next, already trying to curl away from the moon's reach. Her parents' voices rose in protest. "She's our daughter, let us speak." Elder Marcus's voice cut through. "The accused family may not interfere with moon judgment. Step back or be exiled alongside her." Robert and Sarah fell silent, held back by other pack members. Mira caught her mother's eyes, saw Sarah mouth, "I'm sorry." Sorry for what? For not fighting harder, for believing the lies, for something else. The crowd parted, and Elder Marcus approached carrying a leather whip. Not simple leather, this was ceremonial. Used for moon punishments, the leather treated and blessed and edged with silver dust that would burn as it struck. He held it out to Cade. By tradition, the wronged Alpha administers punishment. Cade's face went gray. His hands trembled as he reached for the whip, and in that trembling, Mira saw the last vestige of the boy who'd loved her. But he took the whip anyway. He walked to stand behind her. Mira pressed her forehead against the post, tears streaming, body shaking so hard the ropes cut into her wrists. She whispered, barely audible, "Cade, please. You know me. You know." His voice came from behind her, thick with emotion but inflexible. "I thought I did." The first lash fell. Pain exploded across her back, silver burn, mixing with the physical strike. Mira's scream tore through the night sky. The crowd counted in ritual cadence, 1. The second lash followed. The third. Each one a line of fire that burned through the silver gown, through skin, into the supernatural flesh beneath. By the 10th lash, Mira had stopped screaming. She bit her lips so hard it bled, refusing to give them the satisfaction. By the 20th, her wolf spirit manifested visually, a silver phantom that appeared around her body, trying desperately to protect her human form from the punishment. The crowd gasped at the sight. Wolf spirits rarely manifested unless the bond to Moon was extraordinarily strong. The spirit's fur, bristled teeth bared, but it couldn't actually intervene. Moon law bound it as surely as the ropes bound Mira's wrists. Lash 25, 30, 40. Somewhere around the 50th lash, something changed. Wind rose in the clearing, unnatural and sharp. The torches guttered. Leaves spiraled upward in defiance of gravity. Mira's blood, dripping from her shredded back onto the ground, began to glow. Silver gold luminescence that pulsed with each strike of the whip. Elder Marcus saw it. His eyes widened and his voice cracked with the urgency as he shouted to Cade, "Faster, finish it now!" Cade didn't understand the urgency but obeyed. The lashes fell faster, harder. 55, 60, 65. Mira's wolf spirit began to crack. Actual fissures appeared in the phantom fur, spreading like breaks in glass. The wolf howled, not in pain, but in grief, as the moon's bond fractured under the weight of punishment and injustice. 68, 69. The wind intensified. Mira's hair whipped around her face despite being bound to the post. The glow from her blood spread, creating a circle of light that made pack members step back nervously. 70. The final lash cracked like thunder. Mira's scream broke the night. Her wolf spirit shattered, not metaphorically, literally, exploding in fragments of silver light that rained down on the clearing before dissolving into nothing. The moon above darkened. Clouds covered its face, but underneath, visible to those who knew to look, a subtle eclipse began, as if the moon herself couldn't bear to watch what her children had done. Mira collapsed against the post, held upright only by the ropes. Blood soaked through what remained of the silver gown. Her breathing came shallow and ragged. Inside her chest, where the wolf bond had lived since her first shift at age 12, there was only emptiness now. The absence hurt worse than the lashes, a hole in her soul where pack and moon and belonging had been. Elder Marcus approached with a ritual knife. He cut the ropes and Mira fell, unable to support her own weight. She lay in the dirt, barely conscious, while Marcus stood over her. His voice carried across the clearing. "Mira Ashwood, you are stripped of your wolf caste from the moon's light and sentenced to banishment. You have until sunrise to leave Ironwood territory. If you remain beyond dawn, you will be hunted as rogue and executed without trial." He leaned closer, voice dropping so only she could hear. I'm sorry, child. This was mercy. You don't understand now, but you will. What you carry inside would have killed you worse than this. I've watched it happen 76 times before. At least this way, you might die human. Mira's fading consciousness couldn't grasp his words. She tried to speak, but blood filled her mouth. Two guards lifted her, dragged her toward the compound's main gates. The pack parted before them. Some faces showed pity, others satisfaction. Most just confusion at how the ceremony had transformed into execution. Mira's head lolled eyes finding Cade one last time. He stood frozen, whip still in his hand, face carved from grief and guilt, and something that might have been regret if he'd allowed himself to feel it. Their eyes met, and in that moment Mira found her voice. It came out barely a whisper, but in the shocked silence it carried, "My only crime was believing you could love me more than power." Cade flinched as if struck. Mira's head dropped unconsciousness pulling at her. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Celine standing in the crowd with tears streaming down her face, one hand pressed to her pregnant belly lips, forming words that might have been, "I'm sorry," or might have been, "Goodbye." Then the gates opened, heavy iron reinforced with silver meant to keep rogues out and pack members safe. The guards threw Mira through her body, hitting the furious floor beyond with a sickening thud. The gates slammed shut behind her with a sound like the end of the world. And Myra Ashwood, Beta bloodline healer, former Luna-to-be, lay broken in the wilderness while the moon watched from behind her veil of clouds. Inside the compound, as the crowd dispersed in uncomfortable silence, several things happened simultaneously. Celine collapsed completely, sobbing into her hands. Two pack members helped her toward the healer's lodge, but she kept looking back toward the closed gates, guilt and fear warring on her face. Cade stood motionless, staring at his hands, at the whip, at the blood that stained his palms. Elder Marcus approached, placed a hand on his shoulder, spoke quietly. Cade's face remained blank, but he nodded once before turning toward the Alpha's quarters without looking back at the gates. And Elder Marcus, while everyone else dispersed, walked to where Mira's blood had pooled on the ground. The silver-gold glow had faded, but the earth itself had darkened where the blood touched, as if burned by something beyond physical heat. Marcus knelt, touched his fingers to the stain. They came away warm, unnaturally warm. He closed his eyes and in memory saw Lydia's blood glowing the same way before she dissolved into wind. His whisper carried only to the night, 77. It's finally happening. He stood, looked toward the gates, toward the wilderness beyond. In his pocket, the ritual knife waited, silver-edged, blessed under dying moons, sharp enough to cut through supernatural flesh. He'd ended 76 Windborne over 25 years. He'd end the 77th before dawn if she survived the night. It was mercy. It had to be mercy. He wouldn't watch another child die screaming, even if that meant he had to be the one who killed her. Beyond the gates in the wilderness that had claimed countless rogues before her, Mira regained consciousness. Pain consumed her. Every breath felt like her lungs were filled with broken glass. Her back, she couldn't even process the agony radiating from the lash wounds. She tried to shift to wolf form to access her healing, to escape through animal instinct. Nothing happened. The wolf was gone, truly gone. Not sleeping, not hiding, erased from her soul as if it had never existed. Mara sobbed, the sound raw and animal despite her human form. She pushed herself to her knees, every movement agony, and looked back at the compound walls. Torches still burned along the ramparts. She could hear the pack's voices, distant and murmuring, life continuing without her, as if she'd already died. She tried to stand, her legs buckled. The blood loss, the trauma, the severing of her wolf bond, it was too much. Mira collapsed again, face down in dirt and fallen leaves. She would die here, alone, unmourned, condemned for crimes she didn't commit by the man she'd loved since childhood. The moon emerged from her clouds above, cold and distant, offering no comfort. Mira's whisper came out broken. "If you ever loved me, if the bond we shared meant anything, please." The moon remained silent. Mira closed her eyes, letting darkness pull at her. Death would be relief. Death would mean the pain stopped, the confusion ended, the betrayal couldn't hurt anymore. As consciousness faded, one final thought flickered. I wish I understood why. Then nothing. Just the sound of her own labored breathing getting slower, and the rustle of wind through trees and the night settling over her broken body. But something else stirred in the darkness. The wind which had risen during her punishment began to circle again. Not violently now, gently, almost tenderly, as if checking whether she still lived. It moved through her hair, across her ruined back, around her broken form, and deep in her chest beneath the hole where her wolf had been beneath the physical pain and emotional devastation. Something else pulsed. A different kind of heartbeat. Ancient, elemental, not moon-blessed. Wind called. The 77th awakening had begun. Consciousness returned in fragments. First came pain, white-hot fire across her back, nerve endings, screaming protests with each shallow breath. Then cold, the forest floor had leached all warmth from her body during the hours she'd lain there. Finally, awareness, the devastating knowledge that everything she'd been had been stripped away in 70 lashes. Mira's eyes opened to find dawn breaking through the canopy above. Gray light filtered between ancient pines, revealing her location, a small clearing, perhaps 2 miles beyond Ironwood's gates, though she had no memory of crawling this far. She tried to move. Her body refused, muscles locked in spasms of agony. The silver gown, what remained of it, had fused to her wounds with dried blood, fabric and flesh indistinguishable. Thirst clawed at her throat. Her lips had cracked and bled during the night. When she tried to swallow, her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. Going to die here, her mind supplied with detached clarity. Blood loss, exposure, infection, anyone would finish what Cade's whip had started. The thought brought no fear. Only a distant curiosity about how long it would take. A sound pierced her haze, running water. Somewhere close, a stream moved over stones. Her body recognized salvation, even if her mind had surrendered. Mira dragged herself forward, using her elbows each movement, tearing fresh screams from her throat. Inches became feet, became yards, a journey measured in heartbeats, and the wet trail of blood she left behind. The stream appeared through undergrowth, narrow and swift water, so clear she could see smooth river stones beneath. Mira collapsed at its edge, submerged her face, drank in desperate gulps that hurt. Going down but tasted like life itself, she rolled onto her side, letting the current wash over her ruined back. The cold water should have hurt, should have sent her into shock, but instead brought blessed numbness. That's when she saw her reflection in a still pool beside the main current. The face staring back barely resembled the woman who'd dressed for her wedding yesterday. Hollow-eyed lips, blue with cold skin, drained of all color except the bruises blooming along her jaw where she'd hit the ground. But her eyes, they glowed silver white in the dawn light, luminous and inhuman, reflecting something that wasn't entirely Mira Ashwood anymore. She blinked hard. The glow remained. Wind stirred around her, though the forest itself stood motionless. Not natural wind, this moved with purpose, curling around her body like invisible hands checking for breaks. Mira's breath caught as the wind touched her wounds. Instead of pain, warmth spread across her back, not healing exactly, but acknowledging, as if the air itself recognized her suffering and offered witness. A voice emerged from the wind, feminine and ancient, carrying the weight of centuries compressed into syllables. Child of the broken moon. Mira's remaining strength fled. She tried to push away from the stream, but her arms gave out. She lay half in water, half on shore, trembling, as the voice continued. The wind coalesced into something almost visible, a shimmer in the air that suggested a woman's form without fully manifesting. Tall, ageless, with presence that made the forest lean away in respect. The voice came again, gentler now. Do not fear me, Mira Ashwood. I am Aela, the first wind, and you are mine. Mira found words through chattering teeth. I don't understand. The shimmer moved closer and warmth followed it. Your wolf is gone. The moon turned her face from you, but you were never truly hers to begin with. Memory surfaced, her nightmare of drowning in wind, the silver flashes and mirrors, the way air had always moved strangely around her. Things she'd dismissed as imagination or tricks of light. Aela's voice held something like satisfaction. You are Windborne, the 77th of an ancient lineage. Your kind existed before wolves learned to honor the moon, before packs carved territories from wilderness. We were the first to bridge flesh and element. Mira's mind struggled to process, I'm just beta bloodline. Healer apprentice. There's nothing special. A gust of wind lifted her slightly, cradling her broken body with surprising tenderness before setting her down again. Your grandmother Rose knew what she carried. She tried to hide it to protect you. Elder Marcus drowned her when you were 3 years old. held her head under water while she begged him to let her daughter and granddaughter live in ignorance. The words landed like physical blows. Her grandmother's death hadn't been an accident. It had been murder, premeditated, calculated. Rage flickered through Mira's exhaustion. Why? Why would he? Ayala's shimmer darkened. Because his daughter Lydia was 76. She awakened at 15 unprepared and untaught, and the power consumed her. Marcus has spent 25 years hunting every Windborne bloodline, ending them before they could suffer Lydia's fate. He thought he was showing mercy. The pieces assembled into horrifying clarity. Marcus had orchestrated everything: the frame-up, the evidence, the public condemnation. Not from cruelty, but from desperate love twisted into genocide. Myra's laugh came out broken. So he destroyed my life to save it. The wind swirled, almost apologetic. He does not understand what you are, what the 77th can become. Lydia fought the wind, tried to control it as wolves control their beasts. That's why it devoured her. But you, if you surrender instead on a fight, you can merge with the element, become something greater than moon-blessed or wind-called. Become both. Hope sparked despite everything. Then I won't die. The power won't consume me like it did Lydia. Silence stretched. When Ayala spoke again, her voice carried regret. The transformation demands a price. Each time you use significant power, it consumes days of your life. You have perhaps 100 days before the wind claims you completely. Unless Mira pushed herself upright, ignoring her body's protests. Unless what? The shimmer moved closer, and Mira felt breath that wasn't breath against her face. Unless you learn what Lydia could not, how to stop taking from the wind and start flowing with it. To surrender your human need for control and merge completely with the element, then the cost disappears. But the learning, Ayala paused. Few have achieved it, and those who tried and failed suffered fates worse than simple death. 100 days, 3 months to master an impossible skill, or cease to exist. Mira should have despaired, should have wept at the cosmic cruelty of surviving execution only to face slower obliteration. Instead, something cold and sharp crystallized in her chest. She looked toward where Ironwood's compound lay hidden beyond miles of forest. Show me. Teach me everything. I have 100 days to become something they can't destroy. Ayala's laugh carried approval. Now you sound like my daughter. Very well. But first you must heal. And healing requires your first true use of power. The shimmer reached toward Mira's back. Wind, impossibly gentle, touched the lash wounds. Pain exploded fresh, then transformed into something else. Heat that didn't burn, pressure that didn't crush, the sensation of flesh knitting itself together in patterns that shouldn't exist in nature. Myra screamed, but it wasn't entirely pain. Her back blazed with silver gold light, visible even in daylight. The wounds closed not into scars, but into luminous patterns, lightning marks that traced each lash across her skin, permanent and glowing faintly beneath the surface. When it finished, Mira collapsed forward, gasping. Her back no longer screamed agony. Instead, it hummed with residual energy, each lightning scar pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Ayala's voice came from farther away now, fading. You just used 3 days of life to heal. 97 remain. Use them wisely, child of storm. I will return when you call. Until then, survive. The shimmer vanished. The unnatural wind died. Mira knelt alone beside the stream in a forest that suddenly felt vast and hostile. But when she looked at her reflection, now the silver-white eyes stared back with something new behind them. Not just survival, purpose. 5 days passed in a blur of learning what it meant to be powerless and powerful simultaneously. Mira discovered her windborne senses gradually. She could feel air currents like others felt temperature, the subtle shifts and flows, the pressure changes that preceded weather shifts. When she focused, she could trace individual gusts across miles of forest, following their paths like threads in a tapestry. But control remained elusive. Trying to manipulate wind was like grasping water. The harder she squeezed, the more it slipped away. On the second day, she attempted to move a single leaf using focused intention. The leaf skittered sideways, success by any measure. Then her hair flashed white at the temples, a streak on each side stark against her dark brown. Her reflection showed subtle lines at the corners of her eyes that hadn't existed before. Ayla's voice had whispered from nowhere. 8 hours gone. You fought the wind instead of asking. By the fourth day, Mira had learned to hunt using minimal power. She could sense where deer moved by the air they displaced, track rabbits by the vibrations their passage sent through currents. Small uses cost minutes instead of hours, but they added up. Her hair now showed white streaks running 6 inches from her scalp. She looked older, not dramatically, but enough that she'd aged perhaps 2 years in less than a week. 91 days remained. On the fifth evening, while Mira crouched beside a stream cleaning the rabbit she'd caught, voices drifted through the forest. Wolf voices, but not ironwood. These carried different cadences, rougher edges. Rogues. Mira froze every instinct, screaming to run, despite having no wolf left to flee with. She pressed herself against a massive pine trunk, controlling her breathing the way healer training had taught her. 3 wolves emerged from the underbrush, large males in partial shift, caught between human and beast. Their fur was matted, their human features twisted by the transformation's incompleteness. Rogues often got stuck this way, unable to fully shift without a pack bond to anchor them. The lead wolf's nose lifted, scenting, his eyes feral yellow locked on her hiding spot. His voice came out guttural, damaged by the partial shift. Smeller, female, alone, no pack scent. The second wolf circled left. Easy prey. Mira's hand found a fallen branch, useless as a weapon, but better than nothing. Her mind raced through options. Fight impossible without wolf flea. They'd run her down, use power, cost days she couldn't spare. A fourth voice cut through the clearing, commanding and fully human. Stand down. The wolves turned as one. A man stepped from the shadows, late 20s tall, with dark hair pulled back and scars crisscrossing visible skin. He wore simple clothes, moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd survived things that would break lesser men. His eyes found Mira's hiding spot unerringly. You, come out. Mira weighed refusal against compliance, decided cooperation offered better survival odds than antagonizing them. She stepped into view branch, still gripped tight, chin raised, despite terror thrumming through her veins. The scarred man studied her with unsettling intensity. His nostrils flared, taking in her scent. You smell like ironwood, but also like nothing I've encountered. What are you? Mira's voice came out steadier than as she felt, exiled. One of the partial shift wolves growled, Ironwood exile, we should kill her. Send a message. The scarred man's hand shot up, silencing him. We don't kill without cause. That's how we're different from them. He moved closer to Mira, circling slowly. She turned to keep him in sight, branch raised. When he completed the circle, his expression had shifted from suspicion to something like recognition. He extended his hand, Rowan Blackthorn, former alpha of Clearwater Pack, now leading rogues who refused to die quietly in the wilderness. Mira stared at the offered hand. Everything she'd been taught said rogues were feral, dangerous beyond reasoning with. But this man spoke with the authority of someone who'd led packs who remembered civilization. She lowered the branch slightly. Mira Ashwood, former. The words caught. Former Luna-to-be felt like claiming a title she'd never truly held. Former healer. Rowan's eyes sharpened. Why did Ironwood exile you? The question opened wounds still raw. Mira's jaw clenched. They believed lies about me. His expression suggested he understood more than she'd said. Most exiles claim innocence, but you, sir, he gestured at her generally. You're different. The air moves strangely around you. And your eyes. He leaned closer, studying her face. They flash silver when you are frightened. That's not moon-blessed. That's something older. Mira's hand tightened on the branch, but Rowan stepped back, palms raised in peace. I'm not threatening you. I'm offering alliance. My group? He gestured to the 3 wolves and implied more beyond sight. We're 40 strong. Exiles, lone wolves, pack rejects. We survive by cooperation, not hierarchy. If you need shelter protection, while you figure out what you are, we offer it freely. Every instinct said to refuse to remain alone rather than risk trusting anyone again. But 91 days wasn't enough time to master Windborne power and survive wilderness threats simultaneously. Mira met Rowan's gaze directly. What do you want in return? His smile held no humor. Honesty. If you're dangerous, I need to know. If you're being hunted, I need to know. My people have lost everything already. I won't risk them for secrets. Fair terms. More than fair, actually. Mira lowered the branch completely. I'm Windborne, one of the last. Ironwood's elder has been hunting my bloodline for 25 years. He orchestrated my exile because he thinks killing me is a mercy compared to what the power will do. The three wolves behind Rowan shifted nervously. One whispered, Windborne, the old stories. Rowan silenced him with a look before turning back to Mira. Can you control it? Mira's laugh came out bitter. I'm learning. Badly. Each use costs me days of life. I have maybe 3 months before it consumes me completely. The clearing fell silent. Even the forest seemed to listen, waiting for Rowan's judgment. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. 3 months is enough time to learn. And if you don't, well, we've all faced death before. At least you'll face it with people who won't betray you for politics. The simple acceptance, the lack of judgment or fear or demands for proof, something in Mira's chest cracked. She'd been prepared for rejection or exploitation, not basic human decency. Rowan gestured toward the forest. Our camp is 2 miles northeast. We have food shelter healers who work with what little supplies we can gather. You're welcome to join us. Or not. The offer stands either way. He turned to leave the three wolves falling in behind him. Mira's voice stopped them. Why would you help me? You don't know me. Rowan looked back, and in his scarred face she saw the weight of losses that mirrored her own. Because 4 years ago, Clearwater Pack exiled me for refusing to execute rogue children. I challenged the Alpha on moral grounds, lost the fight, and got thrown into this wilderness to die. 40 people followed me out of loyalty or shared disgust with pack law. We've built something here, not a pack but a family. And family doesn't abandon people when they're broken. He started walking again, called over his shoulder, 2 miles northeast. Look for the smoke from evening fires. Then he and his wolves disappeared into the forest, leaving Mira alone with her rabbit and a choice. Stay isolated, protect herself from further betrayal, die alone in 3 months. Or risk trusting strangers who'd already lost everything and might understand what that meant. The decision took less than a minute. Mira gathered her meager supplies and headed northeast. 200 miles south in Ironwood's compound, Cade Thornridge stood in what had been Mira's quarters and felt his soul disintegrating. 7 days since the ceremony. 7 days of going through motions, leading patrols, presiding over councils, maintaining the facade of an alpha who'd made a difficult but necessary decision. 7 days of dying inside while pretending to live. He'd waited until everyone slept before coming here. The room remained exactly as she'd left it that morning. Wedding preparations frozen in time, hair ribbons on the vanity, healing herbs organized on shelves, books of moon lore stacked beside her bed, and on the writing desk, her personal journal. Cade had avoided it for 6 days, afraid of what he'd find. But tonight, the silence had become unbearable. He needed to hear her voice, even filtered through written words, even knowing it would destroy him further. He opened the journal to the first page. Mira's handwriting, precise and careful, the script of someone who took pride in small things, filled the cream paper with entries dating back 5 years. Age 19. Cade brought me moonflowers today, said they reminded him of my smile. I'm going to marry him. I know this with the same certainty I know the sun rises. Age 20. We talked about children tonight. He wants 3. I want 4. We compromised on 5 and laughed until we cried. How did I get so lucky? Age 22. His father died today. I held Cade while he wept, and I realized I'm not just his promised mate. I'm his home, and he's mine. Page after page of love letters disguised as diary entries, plans for their future, hopes for the pack they'd lead together. Small moments of awe documented with careful detail. Not a single word about poison or jealousy or murder. Cade's hands trembled as he reached the final entry written the morning of the ceremony. Verse 24, today I marry my soulmate. I've never been more certain of anything. Whatever challenges come, whatever the future holds, I know we'll face it together. Because that's what love means, choosing each other every day in every way. I'm so happy I could burst with it. The journal fell from Cade's hands. He stared at the final words, I'm so happy, and felt something fundamental break inside his chest. She'd been innocent. He'd known it even as he raised the whip. Known it with absolute certainty in the part of himself that couldn't be deceived by evidence or politics. the part that had loved her since they were children, and he'd condemned her anyway. The door opened without warning. Cade spun to find Celine standing in the doorway, her pregnant form silhouetted against hallway lamplight. Her face was ravaged, dark circles, hollow cheeks, the look of someone haunted by choices they couldn't undo. Her voice came out hoarse. "I need to tell you the truth." Cade's jaw clenched. "I already know the truth. I've known it since the whip hit her back the first time." Celine moved into the room, closed the door behind her. "Then why?" His roar cut her off. "Because I'm a coward." The word hung in the air between them, ugly and absolute. Cade's voice dropped to something raw. "Marcus came to me 3 days before the ceremony, showed me evidence that I'd been secretly releasing rogue children instead of executing them. 12 pardons over 2 years. If the council discovered it, I'd be tried for treason and executed." Celine's hand moved to her belly, protective instinct automatic. Cade continued, each word dragging him deeper into self-loathing. He said if I supported his plan to exile Mira, the evidence would disappear. He claimed it was mercy that she was Windborne and would die screaming if she awakened like his daughter. He made it sound like I was saving her. His laugh came out broken. "But I knew it was murder dressed as mercy, and I chose to save myself instead of her." Celine's sob filled the quiet. "He threatened my baby too. Finn's baby. Said he'd kill them both if I didn't play the part. But at least I was forced. You," her voice cracked. "You chose it." The accusation landed like it should, devastating and deserved. Cade moved to the window, stared toward the wilderness where he'd thrown away everything that mattered. "Tell me what you know. About Marcus, about the Windborne, all of it." Celine sank into a chair, exhaustion evident. "Marcus has been hunting bloodlines for 25 years. There's a vault beneath the compound records of 76 eliminations. Mira was number 77. He believes she's the one from some prophecy, the one who will end the moon's reign if she awakens fully." Cade's hands fisted against the windowsill. "Does she know about what she is?" Celine shook her head. "I don't think so. But if she survived the exile, if she's still alive, the power will awaken on its own. Trauma triggers it. And what we did to her..." She stopped, unable to finish. What they'd done would awaken any latent power, would force transformation as surely as the moon called wolves to shift. If Mira lived, she'd become exactly what Marcus feared, and it would be Cade's fault. He turned from the window. "I'm going after her." Celine's eyes widened. "Marcus will stop you. The council." His voice carried absolute conviction. "Let them try. I've been alpha for 2 years by being what my father wanted, hard, inflexible, choosing duty over conscience. It's made me into someone I don't recognize. Someone who could raise a whip against an innocent woman because politics demanded it." He moved toward the door, paused beside Celine. "If I find her alive, I'll spend the rest of my life earning her forgiveness. If I find her dead..." His voice went cold. "Then Marcus and I will have a very different conversation about mercy and monsters." Celine stood, grabbed his arm. "Cade, wait. If you leave now, the council might vote to strip your alpha seat. They're already questioning your judgment after the ceremony." He pulled free. "Then they can have the seat. I'm done choosing power over people." The door closed behind him, leaving Celine alone in Mira's room, surrounded by the ghosts of happiness that would never be. 3 weeks after exile, Mira knelt beside a stream, teaching 3 rogue children how to feel wind currents. The children ages 8, 10, and 12 watched with wide eyes as she demonstrated moving a leaf across water's surface using only focused intention. The leaf danced and spun, responding to her guidance. Small uses like this cost only minutes now. She'd learned to work with wind, instead of commanding it, reducing the life drain from hours to heartbeats. Her hair had gone white to her shoulders. Fine lines marked her face permanently. She looked 30 instead of 24. 73 days remained. The youngest child, a girl named Lily who'd been exiled for accidentally shifting during a human market visit, reached toward the leaf with wonder. "Can you teach me?" Mira smiled. "You're moon-blessed, not wind-called, but I can teach you to sense air currents. It helps with hunting." She'd been with Rowan's community for 2 weeks. They'd welcomed her without condition, given her space to grieve and heal, and begin learning what she'd become. The camp sprawled across a hidden valley. Crude shelters built from salvaged materials, a central fire pit where meals were shared, sentries posted at all entrances. 40 rogues living as family rather than pack survival built on cooperation instead of hierarchy. Rowan had kept his word about no expectations. He offered protection and asked nothing in return except honesty about threats. When Mira had explained about Marcus's hunting about the price her powers demanded, he'd simply nodded and said, "Then we help you learn faster." Movement at the valley's entrance drew her attention. The sentries were calling alarm visitors approaching. Mira stood instinctively positioning herself between the children and potential danger. Her hands flexed ready to call wind despite the cost. Rowan emerged from his shelter, 6 warriors flanking him. His voice carried across the camp. "How many?" The sentry called back, 5. "One alpha signature. They're asking for parley." Rowan's eyes met Mira's across the distance, asking silent permission. This was about her. She recognized it in his expression. She nodded once. 5 figures entered the valley, hands raised in peace. 4 warriors she recognized from Ironwood patrols, and leading them Cade. Mira's breath stopped. The world contracted to just his face, older and haunted eyes searching the camp until they found her. For a frozen moment, neither moved. 3 weeks of distance collapsed into 3 feet of charged air between them. Then Rowan stepped forward, placing himself deliberately in Cade's path. "Alpha Thornridge, you're far from Ironwood territory." Cade's attention tore from Mira to address Rowan. "I'm here to speak with Mira Ashwood, not as Alpha to Exile, but as—" His voice cracked slightly, "as someone who owes her truth." Rowan's posture remained protective. "She doesn't owe you conversation." Mira found her voice surprised by its steadiness. "It's all right, I'll hear him." Rowan looked back at her, concern and question in his expression. She nodded again, firmer this time. He stepped aside, but not far. His message was clear. Cade could approach, but any threat would be met with force. Cade moved closer, and Mira saw the full extent of what 3 weeks had done to him. He'd lost weight, aged in the way people do when grief becomes physical. His eyes held shadows that hadn't existed before. He stopped 10 feet away, as if afraid coming closer would shatter something fragile. "You're alive." The words came out with such relief that Mira felt her chest constrict, despite everything. Her response emerged cold. "Disappointed," Cade flinched. "No, God's no. Mira, He stopped, swallowed hard. "I know the truth, about Marcus, about the frame-up, about what you are. I've known since I raised the whip." The confession hit harder than expected. Part of her had hoped he'd been deceived, manipulated, innocent in his guilt. But this was worse. He'd known, and condemned her anyway. Mira's voice came out flat. "Why are you here?" Cade's hand moved toward her, dropped. "To bring you home. To clear your name publicly. To—" Her laugh cut him off, sharp and broken. "Home, you think I want to go back to the pack that watched you destroy me and did nothing?" His face crumpled. "Mira, please. Let me fix this. I'll abdicate if necessary. Marcus will be exiled. You'll be vindicated." She stepped forward, closing the distance, and he went still. "I don't want vindication from people who believed I'd murder a child. I don't want your throne. I don't want—" Her voice broke. "I don't want anything you're offering." Cade's jaw worked. "Then what do you want?" The question opened something in her chest. Want. Such a strange concept for someone who had 73 days left before wind consumed her completely. Mira met his eyes directly. "I want you to leave. I want to spend whatever time I have left free from pack politics and alpha duties and pretending. I want—" She gestured at the rogue camp around them. "This. People who accept me without demanding I be something I'm not." Understanding and devastation warred across Cade's face. "So that's it. We're done." The words hung heavy between them, weighted with 10 years of history. Mira's hand moved unconsciously to her chest where the mate bond had lived before it shattered. The absence still ached, would always ache, but the pain had transformed into something else. Not healing, but acceptance. She found calm she hadn't known she possessed. "We were done the moment you chose to believe lies over truth. The moment you decided pack stability mattered more than my life. You made your choice, Cade. Now live with it." Rowan stepped forward, voice carrying quiet authority. "You've delivered your message. Time to leave." But before Cade could respond, a howl split the air, long and warning, coming from the valley's southern entrance. The sentry's shout followed incoming 60-plus warriors. Chaos erupted. Rowan's rogues grabbed weapons. Parents pulled children toward shelters. Warriors formed defensive positions. Cade spun toward his team. I didn't bring them, I swear. But Mira already knew who had come. A voice amplified by Alpha Command rolled across the valley, carrying from the southern approach. Mira Ashwood, by order of Ironwood Pack, in Moonlaw surrender for trial and execution. Elder Marcus had found her, and he'd brought an army. The valley erupted into controlled chaos. Rowan's warriors moved with practiced efficiency, herding children toward the caves at the valley's northern edge, while fighters formed defensive lines. 40 rogues against 60 trained pack warriors. Mathematics that promised massacre. Mira stood frozen, watching Marcus emerge from the forest's edge. 60 years old, but moving with the lethal grace of a man half his age, flanked by Ironwood's elite guard. Behind them, more warriors materialized from the trees surrounding the valley's southern and eastern approaches. Cade positioned himself beside Mira, voice urgent. This is my fault. I led them here without knowing my scent trail. Rowan cut him off. Explanations later. Right now, we need... Marcus's amplified voice rolled across the valley again. Mira Ashwood, I'm offering mercy one final time. Surrender peacefully. Face judgment with dignity. I promise your death will be swift, painless. Far better than what the wind will do to you. The words carried certainty that made Mira's skin crawl. He genuinely believed he was saving her. She stepped forward, away from Cade and Rowan. Her voice carrying without amplification as wind itself lifted her words. You murdered my grandmother, held Rose Ashwood underwater while she begged for mercy. You've killed 76 others over 25 years. Don't talk to me about dignity. Silence fell across both camps. Even Marcus's warriors shifted uncomfortably at the accusation. Marcus's expression didn't change. I gave Rose the same mercy I'm offering you. Quick death before the awakening consumed her. She thanked me with her last breath. The lie, or perhaps truth from his twisted perspective, made Mira's rage crystallize into something cold and focused. Rowan's hand found her shoulder, warning, don't engage. We evacuate while... A child's scream cut through the tension. Lily, the 8-year-old Mira had been teaching, had bolted from the cave entrance, terrified by the confinement running directly into the open ground between camps. Everything happened in the space between heartbeats. 3 of Marcus's warriors shifted to wolf form, seeing easy prey instinct overriding orders. They charged the child. Rowan shouted commands, but the distance was too great. Lily froze, small body paralyzed with terror. And Mira moved, not physically. She couldn't reach Lily in time with merely human speed. But Win-Win could move faster than thought. The gust exploded from Mira with force that flattened grass in concentric circles. It caught the 3 charging wolves mid-leap, hurled them backward into their own lines with bone-cracking impacts. The wind wall solidified between Lily and Marcus's forces, invisible but absolute. Mira felt the cost immediately. White spread through her hair like frost consuming dark earth, racing from roots to tips in seconds. Her hands aged before her eyes, skin going papery, veins prominent. The lines on her face deepened, multiplied. 4 days. The calculation came automatically taught by weeks of painful learning. She just burned 4 days of life to save 1 child. 73 minus 4. 69 days left. Worth it. Lily scrambled back toward the caves. The wind wall held shimmering now with visible silver-gold energy that pulsed with Mira's heartbeat. Marcus's eyes widened, then hardened. So it's begun. The awakening. Child, you've just proven why you must die. That power will consume you. Better to end it now than watch you suffer Lydia's fate. Mira's voice came out colder than she'd known she could sound. I'm not Lydia, and I'm not afraid of you. But her hands shook as she lowered them. The wind wall dissipated. Maintaining it would cost days she couldn't spare. Marcus raised his hand, preparing to signal attack. Cade stepped forward, positioning himself deliberately between Mira and Marcus. Elder, I challenge your authority in this matter. As Alpha of Ironwood, I order immediate withdrawal. The declaration sent ripples through both camps. Challenging an elder's judgment publicly was tantamount to declaring civil war within pack structure. Marcus's expression remained calm. You lost your authority the moment you let her live the first time. The council knows what you are, Cade Thornridge. A weak alpha who pardons rogues and hesitates at necessary violence. They sent me to correct your failures. Cade's face went pale. The council didn't authorize. A new voice interrupted. Actually, they did. Elder Tobias emerged from Marcus's ranks, flanked by two other council members. His weathered face held regret, but not uncertainty. Cade, you've shown mercy where Moon Law demands justice. The council voted 3 days ago, 4-3 in favor of Marcus leading this action. Your seat is under review pending outcome. The political coup had been planned meticulously. Marcus hadn't just come to kill Mira, he'd come to consolidate power by demonstrating Cade's weakness. Cade's jaw clenched. Then the council has forgotten what it means to lead with conscience instead of fear. Tobias's expression flickered with something like sympathy. Step aside, son. Let Marcus end this. Save your position. You can still lead Ironwood if you... Cade's roar cut him off. No! The word echoed off the valley walls, carrying alpha command that made even Marcus's warriors hesitate. Cade's voice dropped but lost none of its intensity. I stood by once while injustice was done. I raised a whip against an innocent woman because politics demanded it. I've spent 3 weeks drowning in that choice. I won't make it again. He shifted to wolf form, massive black beast alpha power radiating from every line and positioned himself at the head of Rowan's defensive line. The message was unmistakable. If Marcus wanted Mira, he'd have to go through Ironwood's alpha to get her. Marcus's expression turned pitying. So be it. You've chosen exile with her. How romantic. How futile. He signaled attack. 60 warriors surged forward as one coordinated mass. Rowan's 40 rogues met them with desperate courage, but the math was brutal. Within seconds, 3 rogues fell overwhelmed by superior numbers and training. Mira watched the slaughter begin and felt something inside her chest ignite. These people, rogues, exiles, forgotten wolves who'd built family from nothing, were dying because she'd brought Marcus's wrath to their doorstep. Ayala's voice whispered from nowhere. You know what you must do, but the cost? Mira cut her off. I know the cost. I don't care. She stepped into the open ground between the lines, raised both hands, and stopped holding back. The storm that answered her call made the wind wall look like a child's breeze. Hurricane-force winds exploded outward in a sphere with Mira at its center. Warriors from both sides were lifted off their feet, hurled backward, slammed into trees and stones with force that shattered bones. The sounds of impact, wet cracks, and screams filled the valley. Mira didn't discriminate. Rogue and pack warrior alike were scattered like leaves before the tempest. Only those still near the caves, children, elderly, the already wounded, remained untouched, protected by Mira's focused intent. Lightning forked from clear sky, striking the ground in a circle around her. Each bolt carved black scars into the earth, close enough that ozone stench filled the air. Her hair went completely white, every strand bleached to silver gold. Her face aged years in seconds. 30 became 35, became 40, lines deepening, skin loosening, the price of power made visible. But she didn't stop. Thunder rolled continuously now, a heartbeat made audible. Rain began falling, upward droplets defying gravity as wind currents spiraled in impossible patterns. Mira lifted higher feet, leaving the ground suspended by air currents that responded to her will as naturally as breathing. The spiral mark over her heart blazed through her clothing, visible to everyone, pulsing in rhythm with the storm. When she spoke, her voice carried through the chaos without shouting, multiplied by wind itself. I warned you. The wind protects those who can't protect themselves. She released the warriors she'd thrown, let them crash to the ground bruised, but alive. Most scrambled back toward the forest's survival instinct, overriding orders. But Marcus remained standing, anchored by sheer will and alpha command. Behind him, 10 elite guards held position, despite terror evident in their eyes. Marcus stared up at Mira, hovering in her storm, and his expression shifted from determination to something more complex, recognition mixed with grief. His voice cracked. Lydia, my God, you look just like Lydia in those final moments. The words penetrated Mira's rage. She descended slowly, winds calming, but not dispersing entirely. When her feet touched ground again, she swayed with exhaustion. The cost assessment came immediately brutally clear. 30 days. She'd burned 30 days of life in less than 2 minutes. 69 minus 30. 39 days remained. Just over a month before the wind consumed her completely. Her knees buckled. Cade shifted back to human, bleeding from multiple cuts caught her before she fell. She wanted to push him away, maintain her anger and distance, but her body refused to cooperate. Marcus approached slowly, guards flanking him, but weapons lowered. He looked older suddenly, the weight of 25 years visible in every line of his face. He knelt before Mira, close enough that only she and Cade could hear. Rose said the same thing before she died. The wind protects. I thought it was delirium, but she was trying to teach me, trying to show me what Windborne could become if we didn't fear them. Mira found her voice hoarse from exertion. Then why did you kill her? Marcus's eyes glistened. Because I watched my daughter dissolve into wind while she screamed for me to save her. Because I spent 15 years raising Lydia, loving her, and then had 3 days of watching her awaken before she ceased to exist. The ghost told me about the 77, said she would be different, would master what Lydia couldn't. But I only heard that there would be more suffering, more children dying. I couldn't, his voice broke. I couldn't watch that again. Understanding crashed through Mira despite her anger and pain. Marcus wasn't evil. He was a father driven mad by grief who'd spent a quarter-century trying to prevent other families from experiencing what destroyed his. It didn't excuse 76 murders, didn't erase her grandmother's death or the exile or the lashes, but it explained them. Mira's hand found Marcus's shoulder, the gesture costing her remaining strength. Lydia died because no one taught her, because you were all afraid instead of curious. I'm not dying, Marcus. I'm learning. And if you'd let Rose teach me, instead of drowning her, maybe I could have saved Lydia. The words landed like physical blows. Marcus's face crumpled, 25 years of conviction, shattering against the truth he'd never wanted to see. His whisper barely carried, "What have I done?" A commotion at the valley's southern edge interrupted the moment. 4 figures broke through the tree line, moving at full sprint. Celine led them, heavily pregnant, belly making her ungainly, followed by 3 ironwood warriors. She collapsed at the valley's center, gasping, "Marcus, Council, they're coming!" Vote changed. Elder Tobias moved to help her, concern overriding politics. Celine clutched his arm. The council discovered Marcus's records. The 76 deaths. They're calling emergency tribunal. You're both accused. She looked between Marcus and Cade, of conspiracy and murder. Marcus stood slowly, and in his eyes Mira saw a man who'd already accepted his fate. Good, it's time for truth. But Celine shook her head violently. No, you don't understand. They're not coming to arrest you. They're coming to execute anyone involved. The records listed collaborators, guards, trackers, healers who helped dispose of bodies. 20 names total. They'll kill all of you to bury the scandal. The valley fell silent as the implications settled. The council wasn't interested in justice. They wanted the problem eliminated before other packs learned Ironwood had been conducting a secret genocide for 25 years. Marcus's laugh came out hollow. How efficiently we clean our own messes. Cade's voice cut through. How long do we have? Celine struggled to catch her breath. They left Ironwood an hour ago. Maybe 30 minutes before they arrive here. Too close, too fast. The valley would become a massacre site where the council could claim Rogues and Windborne had attacked each other, while Ironwood's forces tried to maintain peace. Rowan appeared beside Mira, somehow uninjured, despite the chaos. We can evacuate through the northern passages. It'll be tight with children, but... Marcus interrupted. They'll track you. I taught them how. You'll make it maybe a day before they find you and execute everyone as witnesses. His expression hardened with decision. Unless they believe the threat is already neutralized. Understanding dawned on Mira and Cade simultaneously. They spoke together, no. Marcus smiled, and it reached in his eyes for the first time. I'm already dead, children. The council has decided, but I can make my death matter. I can give you time. He turned to his elite guard. Return to Ironwood. Tell the council you found the Windborne, that I executed her, that she killed me in final attack. Provide bodies as proof, burn them beyond recognition if you must. Make them believe it's over. One guard objected. We won't leave you two. Marcus's alpha command, still potent despite age, silenced him. You will follow orders. You will protect these rogues by giving the council their scapegoat. Me. Now go. The guards hesitated, then obeyed, disappearing into the forest with backward glances full of guilt and relief. Celine pushed herself upright, one hand on her belly. I'm staying. I helped frame her. I deserve, Marcus's voice gentled. You deserve to raise that child, to give her the truth when she's old enough, to be better than we were. He looked at Cade. You'll take care of them, the rogues anyone. Marcus's genocide displaced. Cade nodded, throat working. I swear it. Finally, Marcus turned back to Mira. I can't undo what I've done. Can't bring back Rose or the others. But maybe I can stop the cycle here. Stop the fear that makes monsters of fathers. He pulled the ritual knife from his belt, the silver edge that had ended 76 lives. Held it out to Mira. End it. Make my death look like battle. Give them their story. Mira stared at the offered weapon, mind reeling. He was asking her to kill him, to become his executioner after he'd tried to be hers. Her hand didn't move toward the knife. I'm not you. I don't kill people because it's easier than saving them. Marcus's smile turned sad. No, you're better than me, than all of us. That's why you'll survive the awakening. That's why you're the 77th. He drove the knife into his own abdomen, sudden and precise, angled upward toward his heart. The motion was practice, certain, the choice of a man who'd done this 76 times and knew exactly how to make it quick. Blood bloomed across his shirt. He stayed standing through sheer will. Tell whoever asked that I faced the Windborne and learned I was wrong. That fear makes us cruel. That mercy isn't the same as weakness. His knees buckled. Cade caught him, lowered him gently to the ground. Marcus's hand found Mira's grip, weakening. I'm sorry. For Rose. For Lydia. For what I did to you. I thought I was saving you. Mira knelt beside, the wind swirling gently around them both. You were saving yourself from having to feel Lydia's death again. But Marcus, she squeezed his hand. I forgive you, not because you earned it, because holding the anger cost more than I can afford to lose. Understanding lit his eyes moments before the light faded from them entirely. His final exhale carried words too soft for anyone but Mira to hear. Thank you. Then he was gone, and the valley held only the sound of wind and distant thunder. Cade stood face carved from grief and rage and something harder. We need to move, now, before the council arrives and sees. A howl split the air closer than the approaching council. Different cadence, younger voice. A single wolf emerged from the eastern trees, flanked by pack warriors in formal guard positions. The wolf shifted to human form, revealing a woman in her 30s with alpha bearing and eyes that assessed the scene with tactical precision. She spoke with authority that brooked no argument. I am Alpha Meredith of Cascade Pack. We heard reports of Ironwood military action in neutral territory. This constitutes a treaty violation. Her gaze swept the valley, wounded rogues, Marcus's body, the evidence of battle. Which one of you can explain why we shouldn't declare war on Ironwood for this massacre? Silence hung heavy. Then Cade stepped forward. I can. I'm Cade Thornridge, Alpha of Ironwood. This was unauthorized action by a rogue elder. I've come to arrest those responsible and offer reparations. Meredith's eyebrow raised. Reparations for genocide. We've intercepted communications. We know about the 76 deaths, about the Windborne hunting. My pack includes 3 families with those bloodlines. You think reparations cover that? The valley's attention pivoted to Mira, standing with white hair and aged face mark glowing visibly over her heart. Meredith's expression shifted to something more complex. You're the 77th, the one the prophecy spoke of. Mira found her voice. I'm just trying to survive. Your family's the Windborne bloodlines. Are they safe? The question clearly surprised Meredith. For now, Marcus's network didn't extend to Cascade territory, but if Ironwood's council decides to continue his work, Cade cut in, they won't. I'll see to it, personally. Meredith studied him with eyes that had seen decades of broken promises. Words are wind, young Alpha. Prove it. Challenge the council. Force a public tribunal. Expose everything Marcus did and make sure it never happens again. She paused, then added with deliberate weight, or I'll do it for you, by declaring war and occupying Ironwood territory until we're satisfied justice is served. The ultimatum hung in the air, absolute and non-negotiable. Cade's jaw set. I'll call the tribunal, public trial, full transparency. The council will answer for their complicity. Meredith nodded once. You have 1 week. If I don't see concrete action by then, Cascade Pack mobilizes. Understood. Cade's voice carried the weight of oath. Understood. Meredith's gaze shifted to Mira. As for you, Windborne, my pack offers sanctuary. We have records of the old ways texts that survived Marcus's purge. If you want to learn what you are without dying from it, we can help. The offer pulled at something in Mira's chest. Real help, real knowledge. A chance to master the power instead of being consumed by it. But her eyes found the rogue children peeking from the caves. Found Rowan standing protective over his makeshift family. Found the 40 souls who'd accepted her without question. She couldn't abandon them for safety. Mira's voice came out steady. Thank you, but I'm staying here. These people need protection while Cade fixes Ironwood's mess. And I need... She paused, finding words for something she'd only just understood. I need to be somewhere I'm valued for who I am, not what I might become. Meredith's expression suggested respect. Brave, possibly foolish, but brave. The offer stands if you change your mind. She shifted to wolf form, her guard following suit, and they disappeared into the forest as suddenly as they'd arrived. The valley released its collective breath. Rowan approached Mira, voice low. Are you sure Cascade Pack could actually teach you? We're just... Mira touched his arm, the gesture cutting off his self-deprecation. Your family. That matters more than ancient texts. His expression flickered with something deeper than gratitude, but the moment shattered as Celine cried out in pain. Everyone turned to find her on her knees, water streaming down her legs, face contorted. Her voice came out strained. The baby. It's coming. Now. Chaos of a different kind erupted. Healers rushed forward. Rowan barked orders about boiling water and clean cloth. Cade stood frozen utterly out of his depth. And Mira, despite exhaustion and 39 days left and everything that had happened, found herself falling into healer training. Her hands moved with practiced confidence, assessing Celine's condition, preparing for the birth. Because this helping life enter the world instead of watching it leave this was who she'd been before exile. Maybe who she still could be. 3 hours later, Celine's daughter entered the world, screaming her existence to an indifferent scream. Mira cleaned the infant, wrapped her in soft cloth, placed her in Celine's trembling arms. The baby's eyes, barely open, already showed hints of amber wolf blessing. Celine cradled her daughter, tears streaming. Verity, her name is Verity, it means truth. The choice stabbed at Mira's heart, even as she understood its purpose. Celine was naming her child as penance, as promise, as prayer that the next generation would be braver. Cade approached cautiously, looked down at the baby with wonder and terror combined. She's beautiful. Celine's eyes met his, red-rimmed but clear. She's not yours, she's Finn's, my Omega mate. Marcus threatened to kill them both if I didn't frame Mira. But the baby, her voice cracked. The baby is innocent. Whatever happens to me, promise she'll be safe. Cade's hand hovered over the infant's head, not quite touching. I promise, whatever it takes. The moment held weight beyond words, promises and betrayals, and the hope that mistakes could be amended through action. Mira stood legs unsteady and found Rowan watching from nearby. His expression held questions he didn't voice. She moved to stand beside him, shoulder to shoulder. You're wondering if I'll go back with Cade. It wasn't a question. Rowan's slight nod confirmed it. Mira looked across the valley at the rogue families rebuilding after the battle, at the children emerging from caves, now that danger had passed, at the community built from outcasts who'd chosen to survive together. Then at Cade holding vigil over Celine and the baby, his face etched with guilt and determination to be better. Her voice came out certain. No, that part of my life is over. Cade can fix Ironwood's corruption, expose the genocide, make things right. But I can't go back to being who I was. That woman died under 70 lashes. What emerged after? She gestured at her white hair, her aged face, the mark glowing faintly over her heart. This is who I am now, and I need to figure out what that means. Rowan's hand found hers at the touch, careful questioning. She didn't pull away. His voice held warmth. We have 39 days to figure it out together. If you want company. 39 days. Such a short time. But maybe enough to learn what it meant to be free. Mira squeezed his hand. I'd like that. The sun began setting, painting the valley in shades of gold and amber. Tomorrow would bring tribunals and councils and the work of dismantling 25 years of secret genocide. But tonight the valley held only the sound of a newborn's cries, the murmur of rogues sharing evening meals, and the wind whispering promises of transformation yet to come. Mira closed her eyes, feeling air currents map the valley, sensing every life within it. The power no longer fought her. It flowed like breath, natural as heartbeat, costly but necessary. She was learning. And learning, Ayala whispered from nowhere, was the first step toward mastery.